Welcome back, Guardians. In this report, we begin to walk down a rabbit hole of possibility and theory crafting, formulating a potential answer to a question on the tip of everyone's mind, and perhaps a few more. Before we continue, I want to place extra emphasis on this only being but a theory, and nothing more. We are combining threads of information to build a case for what we may believe to be true, that Rasputin may be in league with Gaul, and he may very well be the consul himself, Gaul's right hand and military advisor. Before we begin, our information on both Gaul, the consul, and the Red Legion's motivations is still relatively limited. We may be very well grasping at threads that lead us nowhere beneficial. Regardless, we should tread lightly, at least until more relative intelligence can be provided on this delicate subject. We should first start with what we know, as we'd rather not have this devolve into some baseless conspiracy theory imbued with heretical thinking and notions. Firstly, Rasputin is a Golden Age AI war mind, most likely the last of his kind, and one of the few beings still in existence to have excess knowledge of how the human colonization plans, advanced military emplacements, and how exactly the collapse came about. The war mind, however, has been less than reliable, and rather than ally with us against our enemies, including this new Cabal invasion, he remains relatively silent, either aloof of our troubles or entirely knowledgeable but refusing to take any action in our favor. And you might ask why. Surely, Guardians, the last of humanity's defenders whose predecessors created Rasputin, deserve some type of assistance, whether it be through the application of vast Golden Age armories or just simple intelligence gifting. There is evidence that suggests, and merely so, that Rasputin knew of upcoming attacks just after the traveler's arrival. That, or this AI, certainly has a gift of premonition. Rasputin quietly moving another doomsday weapon into Earth orbit, and all the other launches, too, not just weapons, but people. The colonization schedule pushed up, as if the need to disperse is now imperative. This came from the archives of a General Chen Lan-shu during the Golden Age, discussing Rasputin's strategies in relation to both military emplacements and colonization efforts. It's often stated throughout many records that while the traveler brought about the Golden Age, Rasputin would control and shape its movement for the benefit of all humanity. In this report, there is also a discussion regarding a vision machine, a technical marvel granting the ability of a user to see, or at least sense, a future timeline. Perhaps this vision machine is the same machine the future war cult have in their possession, or another in its line of production. Regardless, this machine was no doubt accessible to humanity's greatest intellectual creation, surpassing the brightest minds and the fastest supercomputers. We speak, of course, of Rasputin. So if this vision machine had the ability to grant far-off senses of what could be, as described by General Chen, stating, once, when she was younger, 60 or 70, Chen Lan-shu pulled rank to get a look at a never-be installation in Taipei. She watched the images in the fresco and she felt this foreboding, this enormous weight, a dread that refused to attach itself to any specific threat. And she felt it again last year when she was briefed on the project in Lasha, the vision machine. An interesting tangent. The capabilities of this machine, and if this item in question is identical to the future war cults, perhaps it's a discussion for another time, but its presentation suits our purposes now. If this machine allowed for Rasputin to see into the future, maybe not our future, but a timeline similar to ours, perhaps he used this scenario to better prepare humanity and himself for the coming storm. Perhaps his analytical mind knew that the coming of the traveler meant that there was a possibility for more forces like it to either arrive or seek it out. The traveler came out of nowhere, entirely unanticipated. Imagine if it hadn't been friendly. Imagine that. Rasputin surely has. Again, to delve into the thoughts of a war mind is almost impossible. Theoretically, Golden Age humanity had hoped that Rasputin would keep its creator's tendencies of compassion and hope, always attempting to see the positive outcome. But to the war mind, the Traveler didn't usher in a golden age. He only brought about a collapse of all things. The second point to this theory, and perhaps the notion that carries the most weight, is the recovered documents regarding the Warmind's order and initiatives during the collapse. While we still have no tangible knowledge of what exactly occurred during the end of the Golden Age, or what exactly brought it about, we do have evidence to suggest Rasputin had guidelines to prevent the Traveler from leaving. Whether it carried these orders out is up for debate in both the Warlock orders and the Cryptarchology, but let's examine the facts more closely. Now, prior to the Cabal invasion, the Traveler has been inert. His last recorded action was the creation and dispersal of ghosts, but for what purpose beyond gathering warriors capable under the Traveler to create a sanctuary for humanity is unknown. But how could something so massive, so awesomely powerful be rendered inoperable, so that all it could muster was preserving its life through minute channeling of the light, or so-called communication with our now missing speaker? These signs point to a cataclysmic event, a crippling of sorts, and Rasputin is seemingly at the center of it all. If available, ISR and War Watch indicates that imminent O departure. Then O departure compromises human and neo-human survival and epoch strategy. We can assume, with a clear certainty, that the O denoted in this report is directly relative to that of the Traveler, and Rasputin's knowledge is absolutely correct. Hypothetically, if the Traveler had left us to our fate, to suffer the collapse and its various alien invasions, how could we have survived without Guardians, without the light? The final portion of the orders Rasputin issued are telling. While vague and militaristic, we can pull apart some of the key points. Activate Loki Crown. Perform deniable authorization. Full cadiometric and neoetic release. Prevent O departure by any means available. Prevent the Travelers, or again what we assume to be the Traveler's departure, by any means. Various warsats, or perhaps yet unknown stores of untold weapons beyond any comprehensible power. Perhaps in time we will find more, but these threads all come together that Rasputin was presumably responsible for the Traveler's now deep slumber. The final portion to this theory that we must address is the relationship of the Cabal on the Dust Palace and its ongoing defense by Rasputin. Various records state that the Dust Palace was a construction effort headed by the Clovis Bray Corporation, the Golden Age tech giant that was responsible for the creation of Siva, and what some hypothesized, the creation of our XO brothers and sisters. Regardless of what Clovis Bray was responsible for, the Dust Palace has an AI research and development wing, but its direct link to Rasputin is still being explored. What our intelligence suggests, however, that the Cabal deployed their Scion flares to brute force their way into Rasputin's systems, to either gain knowledge on the Traveler and its human defenders, or to better understand the solar system the legions had now found themselves in. Why the Cabal have interest in the Golden Age's greatest corporation shouldn't be difficult to perceive, but there is one implication yet unexplored. That the Cabal and Rasputin are in direct communication and that they share a common goal, the end or removal of the Traveler. And all I can think is, if Rasputin had all those mighty tools and it lost, what did it learn? What's it going to try this time around? When I hear about the Dust Palace, those Scion flares getting into Rasputin's mind, I wonder, what would they talk about? Rasputin and those creatures. Perhaps it is a bit of a leap to consider that the Cabal's Red Legion goal of taking the Traveler for themselves, at the cost of humanity's last city, in the future Rasputin would usher in without the Traveler, is common ground. But the similar goal does offer us devastating potentials. Perhaps it was Rasputin who whispered back into the ears of the Scions, offering direct assistance to a Cabal who would champion his cause. Someone who was malleable and suffered a crippling flaw, an error so pronounced, such as the need to procure what one does not have, a jealous conqueror, whose battles and rituals were passed by for a lesser race of warlike monkeys, better suited to their politicking than utilization of the newly gifted power. Perhaps Rasputin is the Consul, operating on our doorstep on his behalf with the Cabal and the newly invading Red Legion. Mind you, there are holes in this theory. So many so that if this conspiracy was to be made into a cup, it could only hold aspirations and hopes of potential rather than the cold waters of truth. But I turn the question to you, Guardians. Is Rasputin the slumbering ally we believe him to be? Or do we wrongfully assume that the Golden Age marvel has our best interests in mind? Seldom in this age of mysticism and debauchery are our wishes granted. Is there a potential that Rasputin is the Consul, or at least in league with the invading Cabal? Or is the Consul yet another masked figure hiding behind overt powers, playing at genocide and warfare? What do you believe? Regardless of what is true, regardless of what may come to be, know this. Whomever our enemy is, whether it be scavenger, insect, machine, or conqueror, whether it be rampant AI or Golden Age marvels, we will persevere. We will carry on the legacy of the human race, because that is what we as Guardians do. We pick up the shield of salvation and cover civilization from all threats, no matter how daunting, how twisted, how perverse they are, because we are Guardians. And no enemy, not this usurper donned in a pure conqueror's white, or his manipulative shadow, this Consul, can stand against us. And while our walls may be battered down, our gates left open, and our glorious city sacked, so as long as one Guardian has the light in his hand, the reconquest of our birthright is always possible. Seek the truth, Guardians, and stay safe.